Ever pondered what you would be prepared to give up in order to fulfill your dreams? Would you trade your most treasured memories for a fresh start? I'll tell you something. Working as a guide for individuals attempting to cross the border, I should never have witnessed the story that haunts me every night and altered my understanding of the actual cost of hope. I'm Mike, and I've been assisting people in crossing the border between Mexico and the United States for many years. I prefer to think of myself as a dream facilitator, or at least that's what I told myself until that fateful October night, even though many people know me as a coyote. An old acquaintance told me about an unfailing path and underground passage that ensured a successful crossing, which is how I found the tunnel that would change everything. Although the cost was far greater than what I typically charge, my clients were enticed by the prospect of a secure route. I had no idea that this tunnel would hold a sinister secret that would follow me around for the rest of my life. I assembled a dozen people, including Carlos, a young doctor hoping for a better life, Robert, an old guy who wanted to spend his last years with his family, and Sarah, a single mother who wanted to be reunited with her children. I was moved by their stories as always, but something felt different this time. There was a strange vibe in the air as we approached the tunnel entrance, hidden behind a cluster of rocks in the middle of the desert. As we continued, I realized that something was wrong, even though the tunnel was initially rather spacious and well-built, with reinforced walls and a rudimentary ventilation system. People started acting differently, and Sarah stopped discussing her children. The real dread struck when I understood that the tunnel was more than just a passageway. Carlos couldn't remember his motivation for studying medicine, and Robert was staring into space as though he had lost his own name. When we finally reached the other side, my 12 companions had completely changed. Technically, they had accomplished their goal. They were on American soil, but the cost had been terrible. They were like empty shells walking aimlessly. It was as if the tunnel had been feeding on their essence, memories, emotions, and everything that made them who they were. I tried to stop them, but it was too late. The tunnel had a strange pull over them that forced them forward like puppets, and I could only watch helplessly as they changed into shadows of who they once were. Their laughter turned into hollow echoed, and their dreams disintegrated like dried leaves carried by the wind. Sarah had forgotten the names of her children. Robert merely sat on the sidewalk and started crying for no apparent reason, while Carlos stared at his hands as though he had never held a scalpel. I've been plagued by remorse ever since for being a part of something so horrible. When someone contacts me looking to cross the border, I refuse to mention that tunnel because I would rather face the known dangers of the desert than condemn another soul to that terrible fate, because I have learned the hard way that some prices are too high even for the biggest dreams. I have seen some of them wandering the streets of various cities, like living ghosts trapped between two worlds that are not really belonging to either. Their families receive them, but quickly realize that the person they knew no longer exists. Only a shell remains that breathes and walks, but has lost everything that made it human. If you ever come across a path that seems too simple or ideal, ask yourself what you are willing to give up in the process, because sometimes the true cost of our dreams is not measured in money, but in pieces of our soul. If this story affected you as much as it did me, don't forget to leave your like. This story serves as a warning that there are places in this world that should not be disturbed, and passages that demand sacrifices too great. I caution you to be cautious about what you wish for, because there are forces in this world that could take you at your word. The next story. Have you ever pondered whether commonplace items could have supernatural abilities? What if I told you that there is a cash register that can display the precise time and manner of each person's death? My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I started working the night shift at the 7-Eleven on Maple Street exactly 3 months ago. At first, the nights went by like any other, with the sound of the air conditioner and the occasional customer coming in for coffee or gas manager. What I am about to tell you is not a work of fiction. Rather, it is my genuine testimony about the events that forever changed my life. Although I needed the job and the extra hours would help pay for my psychology studies, Mike had warned me that the nights could be lonely. With its aisles of energy drinks, snacks, and everyday goods, the supermarket was much like any other. Every now and then, the neon logo would flicker, casting unsettling shadows in the deserted parking lot. Nothing out of the ordinary for a 24-hour business. The night they installed the new cash register, a more contemporary model that they said would increase transaction efficiency, everything changed. I can still clearly recall my first strange experience, which happened on a Tuesday at 3 a.m. when Mr. Thompson, a frequent customer who always purchased coffee and donuts before his security guard shift arrived to pay, the screen began to flicker strangely. Instead of the usual processing message, a series of images appeared that were so vivid they looked like a high-definition movie. When a red truck blew a red light and struck Mr. Thompson squarely on the driver's side, I saw him in his blue car, the same one that was parked outside, looking at his phone, something I had seen him do multiple times in my vision. The impact caused shattered, twisted metal and blood. God, the vision had so much blood. Ended just as suddenly as it had started, leaving me trembling and sweating icily. 3 days later, a deadly accident at the intersection of Oak and Main Street was reported by the local media. A blue automobile was struck by a red truck that had run a red light. James Thompson, the driver, had passed away immediately. I had seen it on the screen, and it was just like that. Every C transaction became a possible nightmare after that. In her dorm room, Emily Parker, a medical student who purchased energy drinks, would overdose on Adderall and die. The suit-wearing executive, Robert Wilson, would have a heart attack at the gym treadmill. While resting next to her family, Maria Gonzalez, the mother who bought milk for her kids, would pass away from a gas leak. I made an effort to alert everyone. I advised Emily not to combine her study aids with energy drinks. I told Robert that he ought to have his heart examined. Some people laughed, some ignored me, and the nicest people thought I was insane or overly stressed from the night work when I even told Maria to check her water heater. My passion intensified rapidly. I began working double shifts because I was certain that if I observed more fatalities, I would discover a pattern and a means to stop the tragedy. I started recording every vision, every client, and every confirmed death in a thorough journal. Obituary reports and newspaper cuttings litter my apartment. I hardly ate and slept. My life had devolved into a never-ending watch for the next vision. Consumers began avoiding my register, and word got out about the 7-Eleven cashier who was crazy and made death predictions. How could I explain that I was attempting to save lives when my boss had cautioned me about my unpredictable behavior? I tried to buy coffee with my debit card one very cold night after a 16-hour shift, but it was refused. The screen flickered and displayed my own ending after the system prompted me to swipe it once more. I was behind the counter in my customary spot in the store when the lights began to go out, the doors closed on their own, and the view changed from shadows to people. Out of the darkness came the ghosts of everyone I was unable to save. Their bodies were just as they had been at the time of their demise. Mr. Thompson, his face pierced by glass. While Robert gripped his chest, Emily had foam at her mouth. Slowly approaching, Maria and her bluish-skinned children's voices blended into a chorus of accusations and cries. "You could have rescued us!" They all responded, "You failed us, Sarah, even though you had the ability to alter our fate." As the cash register screen repeatedly reenacted my demise like a baby, their vile hands extended toward me. Horror loop, 3:33 a.m., was displayed on the clock in the vision. In precisely 5 minutes, as I write these final words, I can already feel the store's temperature decreasing sharply. The hum of the cash register has become a sound akin to faraway cries. I can smell the decay coming, and the shadows in the aisles are beginning to take shape. They've arrived. I see them emerging from the darkness, their ghostly forms obstructing every way out. Static flickers on the cash register, displaying bits and pieces of every death I saw. Mr. Thompson is standing at the main door, holding his bloodied phone and grinning at me with his deformed face. Emily comes stuttering about final exams and dragging her steps out of the energy drink aisle. Robert emerges from the restroom, staring at me with vacant eyes and colorless skin. Near the refrigerators, Maria and her kids appeared, their bodies immobile in a never-ending embrace. Please take caution when using seemingly innocuous new technologies. You never know what sinister secrets or horrifying realities they may conceal. If your card is ever declined at a 7-Eleven in the early morning, please don't swipe it twice. Additionally, remember to like this video. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had a paranormal experience while working the night shift, and subscribe to the channel for more scary tales. Keep in mind that stories that have the potential to be true are the frightening. Until the next story, assuming I make it through tonight.